All right, so it's been a day, or I guess an evening here. I think we finished this up at like 5 o'clock last night. And so now our power lock has had time. Again, the general procedure for me is to let it sit for 3 hours or so, or I let it sit for considerably more because of the just the timing of when we put it on. Normally I would like to put the power lock on, wait a few hours, then put the Collinite on, and then come back and finish it that day, so then I could put a second layer on. So what we're going to have to do is put a layer of Collinite on. I'll work on the trim, and then, or I'll put the Collinite on, remove it, do the layer of trim, or do all the trim, and then come back and put another quick layer of Collinite on top to finish the job. So we won't let it sit overnight. I like to get a couple of layers. I'm just getting the top surfaces here, no pressure, just wiping so that I can apply our first layer. All right, so we're prepped and ready for the application, the final step here to the paint, where we do the 845. So the most common question is, well, why not name your coating? Why not C-Quartz? Why not crystal serum? Why not Miyabi? Why not Kamikaze? Why not whatever? If I have a choice, 100% of the time I'm going to choose wax. If I have the choice, so if I have if the conditions are right, if the car's right, my F-150, my big Raptor, I'm going to coat that thing just because I'm not going to maintain it as well as this car or my GT3. Now my GT3 is coated because we put paint protection film on it, and I wanted to test it. I wanted to see how it looked. But if I have the choice of with clarity, depth, look, the way water reacts, the way that I wash it and maintain it, I'm always going to choose this. Now, the longevity of this isn't as good, but everything else is better. Less susceptible to water spotting. I guess less expensive. It doesn't really matter. I mean, when you add this and power lock, it's what, $18 and $30, so you're what, $48. So similar to a coating, but this will last you. You can do application after application, but my preference of this mainly has to do with the look and how it washes and how I maintain it. So again, if I have the choice, I'm going to choose this over a coating, right? And now it depends on the car. So when we're applying this, this is a semi-solid. So what I do is just kind of squeeze the bottle and make little circles. Just like the power lock, if not more, I want to make sure that I'm managing how much I'm putting on the surface. Now the paint is super slick, I guess you could say. I don't know that I'd like to call paint that, but the power lock that's on the surface makes this extremely slick and easy to apply the Collinite. So err on the side of using less than more, and it'll make your life easier when you're removing it. So, I think you guys can see that I put a few dots, very light dots, on the applicator. So, as I see people all the time, they're always posting photos of how they put a sprayer on the end of your Collinite, so they heat it up so that it becomes a liquid. But I don't see the need of that. You don't need that much product. I'm going to do the whole hood here on just a few dabs on the paint, or on the pad. So just like our power lock, we're going to apply it. I like to do it in circles. I get more even coverage that way. No, circle scratches are not harder to get out than straight line scratches. I think that's another one of those detailing forum myths. At least I've never experienced any issues with getting scratches out, whether they were straight or in a circle. But this just doesn't go, when you go like this, it just doesn't go on as evenly. So I I do it in circles. And these Adams hex grip, I mentioned this before in several of the videos here throughout the series, that this will last you a long, long time. I'd get a couple of them just in case, but you get one of these. You can throw it in a baggie if you want, but I just throw it face up in the cabinet, and the next time I go to use it, in order to get because the Collinite will leave a little bit of powder, it'll dust a little bit on a used pad. So what I'll generally do is I'll blow it out, and then I'll rinse it in some water, and then blow it out again, and then I'm good to go to use the pad again. So I want to be sure that I'm keeping organized on this, right? Just like with any coating or anything like that, I generally treat this panel by panel. Now I don't think this is a wipe on, wipe off. I let it haze over. I put it on like this, and then just like the power lock, by the time I get back around to the hood, so when I do the entire car, all the painted surfaces, I'm not going to do the trim, because we're going to do the trim with Wolf's trim coat or nano trim, whatever it's called. We'll read it on the bottle. Or wax on just the painted surfaces. I mean, I'm sure you could put this on trim and glass, but much like, a lot of questions about using wheel cleaner to decontaminate, I said, well, I would rather have a concentrated, dedicated product for doing the job. So for most things, I prefer a product that's specifically designed for that application. So just like this, I'm going to do a dedicated trim product for the trim areas. Shoot, another useful part of having a scissor lift is this, and how handy that is. I can stand up here, not have to lean on the car, get up on the roof. Generally, I like to put a single layer on, let it sit overnight or several hours. In this case, we're going to let it sit as long as it takes me to do the trim and the glass. And then, so again, I'm feathering this. I'm not caking it on the pad, just basically squeezing the product and just touching it. So I get a little bit more on the pad occasionally. I don't know that I have any specific tips on how much. If you put too much on, it just makes it harder to get off, that's all. A little bit harder. Another thing you can use to aid as a removal aid, you could use Meguiar's D156 synthetic wax. You could use Optimum spray wax. You could use a detail spray as a removal aid if you needed to. But if you put it on thin enough, you shouldn't need any help. You should be able to just wipe it off. So I also get lots of people that will email me and say, man, I put Power Lock and Collinite on, it only lasted like a day. You had to have done something wrong. You didn't prep the surface. You're using a soap that stripped it off, something that isn't pH neutral. I normally get months and months, 8-9 months out of this, especially if you maintain it along the way. So I've been putting this on cars for, I think, 12 years now. I was thinking about it the other night. And I don't think I've ever once had it where it failed right away. The other nice thing about this, especially if you're just getting into detailing versus a coating, professionals make it out like coatings are so hard to do. They're not that hard to do, but you can mess it up. Getting high spots, and again, if you haven't prepped the surface right, removal of a coating is much more intensive and much less certain than a removal of a wax. It's easier to fix this by just washing it with some citrus wash, call it a day, or wash it with some APC and with your all-purpose cleaner and with your regular soap. All right, so roof's done. Let's move the car up. Actually, let me do the top of the trunk here first. Tell you what, people, having an air compressor and a lift and air conditioning is life-changing. Now, granted, I've taken over a week to do this. I skipped a few days in the process. So that's kept me fresh. And notice you haven't seen me on any rant videos like you normally do when I do a full correction protection series. But I'm going to get used to this. I don't think I'm ever going to be able to go back unless all the conditions are right and I have all the latest, greatest and a lift to work off of. I'm probably going to be too much of a snob to do it. So you can see the pad, and I'm not caking it on, so see how the product kind of sticks out. So I just kind of push it up and just touch. So I squeeze a little and just touch, and then we get little circles like that. That was a little much. And that's all you need. And I do that maybe every half or quarter panel, depending on how big the panel is I'm working with. The one spot is a little trickier to get in. Actually should have done the jam first, the inside, but we'll come back around and do that. So again, the major trade-off to this is that we do this. We're going to have to do it again in 6, 8, 9, 10, 12 months, depending on how often you drive the car. If it's your garage, your car that you drive on the weekends occasionally, you'll get much longer out of it, especially if you're topping it with something like Optimum Spray Wax. So if you're regularly topping it, you'll get lots and lots of time out of it. But as I showed with my blue GT3, you don't want to let it go too long. You end up scratching the paint. As your protectant wears away. The tricky part is knowing exactly when, and so I, in the past, have always done it by calendar. Okay, 6 months, my waxing clock is ticking, and then somewhere between 6 and 9 months, I would hope to decon if it needed to be deconned, which in Florida is almost a guarantee that we would need to decontaminate it, and then polish it. Every time I decon, I at least do a quick finishing polish. I would recommend the same to you. And that's probably a lot of times when people say it doesn't work, they didn't do all the steps. It'd be like putting a coating on, you're asking for trouble. At least if you put this on and you didn't prep properly, you can just start over. With a coating, not that simple. You're going to need to compound the thing. And then even then, compounding it, who knows if you even got the darn thing off. All right, so I'm going to go around, do the rest of the surfaces, and we'll come back and show you wipe off. So here's what the surface looks like. We won't have drastic change in it hazing over. But this is ready to go. I just finished the rest of the car. So I started here, and we'll come and wipe it off. Oh, looks so good. All this work is worth it, just for this. So here's what's going to happen, just to prepare you for what's going to go down here. It's going to look amazing. We're going to put another layer on here in 3 or 4 hours. Then we'll be done. Then what is more likely than not going to happen is you're going to get, the oils are going to come to the surface. So if you get this in the sun, let's say 3 days later, you take it to work, you're out in the parking lot, and you come out and you see all the circles, or some of them, a faint haze of circles all over the car, and you're like, oh my gosh, I ruined it, right? Even though I've been telling you about this for years, people still panic. I guess I do make super long videos, so I get it that you don't watch the whole thing. And so you'll see all the little circles that from all the oil is rising to the surface, and you're going to panic, and you're like, what do I do? First thing you don't do is just get a towel out and start wiping it down, because it's been 3 days, right? And so you have dust and dirt all over the surface. You don't want to jack up the surface you just spent so much time dealing with. So what you do is you wash the car like normal, and you use your drying aid, wipe it off, and it'll be gone. And it usually doesn't come back a second time. If it does, it's probably good, because you still have lots of product and surface. But it usually doesn't come back a second time, and then you're done. So all you do is just do a normal wash, normal wipe down, and you'll have it fixed. So that's part of the Collinite process. And I'm sure some of you are kicking and screaming and yelling about how that shouldn't be that way. Well, first of all, you don't have to use the product if you don't want to. But I mean, just think about, every single product you have has little quirks that you have to deal with. I'm telling you up front that you're going to have to deal with that. And it's not much dealing at all. It's just wash the car. So I usually make it a point to wash it, within like that next weekend. So let's say I finished it on a Sunday evening. I'll drive it for the week, and then I'll wash it that weekend. I want to wash it soon anyway, because I want to get a topper, if I can help it, on the surface, right, of the Collinite. I want to get some optimum spray wax on top of this. And I'll use that as a drying aid, right? So it kills two birds with one stone. I get an extra layer of protection, some extra UV coverage, and I get to wash the car and remove the oils that come to the surface. So just prepare yourself for that. That's what's going to happen 9 times out of 10. Now, it likely wouldn't happen if you don't take the car out much, or you don't park it out in the sun for several hours. Then it's probably not gonna show. My former M3, I never had that issue. A lot of times, because I would baby the thing and rarely drive it. By the time the oils would have come to the surface, I've had plenty of time to cure and set up, I guess. I don't know. So notice I'm not having to use all kinds of effort to wipe this off, and it's because I didn't put too much on. With wax, this is the old adage, wax more doesn't add a thicker layer. Right? You can slop it on there. All that's doing is making it harder to get off. We're leaving trace amounts of product that's semi-bonding to the surface, the painted surface. So I'm going to go through and wipe this off, and then we'll wrap up the last step protectant, or the protection series here, or the protection video, using the Collinite and Power Lock. All right, so that concludes the protection part of this process, at least the protection of the paint. Next video will be on the trim and tires and windows and all of that stuff. So you have a couple of options when we're going through this process, the last step of the process. So after you've polished, we have those videos talking about that. So after the polishing is done, then you would move on to getting the surface prepared to put the protectant on, whether it's a coating or a sealant or a wax. This is a sealant and wax. But you could back the car out and wash it. And I always hit or miss. The advantage of backing out and washing is you get all the dust out of all that polished dust out of everything, and you also get to remove even more of the I guess the oils from the polish. So I would use something like chemical gas citrus wash to do that. Be really careful though. You don't want to scratch the surface you just spent all this time correcting. So you could wash it. I didn't do that mainly because I had the car on the lift. Everything was set up perfectly, and it did take probably a little bit longer to clean it out with eraser. But if you did wash it, you'd come in and dry it, and I would dry it using eraser as a drying aid to get it prepared, get it ready to go. Right? We didn't do that. What we did in this step, or this process, which is another alternative, I blew it out, try to blow out all the cracks, crevices, all the dust, and I blow it off the windows and the door jambs and stuff like that with compressed air. And then I went and wiped it down with eraser using a bunch of towels. I used the big waffle weave white towel, using more eraser than I would have used if I just did it as a drying aid. So that's step one of getting it prepared. Step two, we do our power lock application. Remember, thin. You don't need tons of product. More doesn't get you a thicker layer. Just putting more on is wasting the stuff, which is cheap. So I don't know if that's a valid argument, but you're going to make it a little bit more difficult to remove. Use more towels, things like that. So we put the Power Lock Plus on the surface. Power Lock Plus is a little thicker than the original Menzerna Power Lock formula, which makes it a little easier to deal with. I don't know how much the formula's changed, but it's great nonetheless. The feel of the surface after you put Power Lock on, I'm telling you, will change your life. Then I let the Power Lock, remove the Power Lock, let it cure for say 3 hours or more. I let it cure overnight, so we have a good bond to the surface with the sealant. The idea here is that the sealant will last longer than the wax, and so the sealant becomes our base, and this is what gives us a little bit of our longevity. Not all sealants work with waxes. Not all waxes work or bond with sealants. I don't know why, but this combo works. It's tried and true. So Collinite goes on afterward. Again, on both we're using the hex Adams pads I have in the store, so we're using both of those to apply. I use yellow for sealant and red for wax. I don't know, it just makes sense to me. I'm using the same towel for removal. So Collinite goes on 3 hours after or more after the Power Lock. Again, thin layer means less work. You don't have to then buff out the surface. Chance of introducing scratches. One thing I didn't mention: make sure you check your towel, especially if it's not, even if it's a brand new towel. Just check it and make sure you don't have anything trapped in the towel that could scratch the paint, especially some paint that's really susceptible to scratching. Then we're going to let this sit for 3 or 4 hours. Again, generally I let it sit overnight. I'm going to put a second layer. I'm not going to show you the second layer. The process is the same. So put the second layer on and you're done. I guess you're almost done. Then 3 or 4 or 5 days later, you're going to see the oils come to the surface, and again, you're going to perform a normal wash. I'm going to try to capture that, so we'll see in a few days when the oils come to the surface here. Again, it doesn't always do that, but if it does, then your normal procedure is especially if 3 days later, don't go wipe your car down with detail spray. You're going to scratch it up. Instead, wash it. Do a normal wash. Do a normal drying aid with some optimum spray wax, which you're going to want to get on the surface. In our case, we're going to do bead maker later on, and finish the job. It probably won't sweat or come to the surface again. So I'm not going to put any kind of topper on the Collinite for now, because I don't want to lock in. I don't know what would happen. I never tried it. I don't want to lock in the. I guess you could put spray wax on top. That won't affect it, but I don't know what bead maker would do to the oils coming to the surface. So that's the Collinite, that's the Power Lock, or the PL Plus 845 combo that I've been so fond of for years and years. We should get 7, 8, 9 months of protection out of this if we maintain it, wash it regularly every couple of weeks, a week or a couple of weeks, and it'll last a while. So next video will be trim, tires, glass. Everybody asked me to do a walk around, so let's do a walk around. I think you can make paint look good on camera, even if it's dirty. So I don't know how helpful this is, but I always see people, you can see me in the reflection, so I always see people doing that. I think it's a waste of time, but what do I know? We got the surfaces almost completely scratch free. I noticed a few that were slightly deeper that I didn't get out or couldn't get out or didn't chase or missed, but maybe a half a dozen on the whole car. The thing came out pretty incredible. You can see all those swirls and scratches that we had before are gone. Down the side. Side skirts is the word I was looking for. The fenders. And up top. I did polish the tail lights with a white pad in perfect finish. We'll put the plate back on tomorrow after we finish the Collinite. I'll be working on the exhaust tips here and the trim in a minute. But there's the car. I will say this is probably the best I've ever done. Largely because of the conditions, I went further than I ever have. You know, a lot of those little spot treatments of the doing, like chasing every little scratch, I normally wouldn't do because I just wanted to get the job done. There you have it. We'll get some shots in the sun later on when we're doing the oil removal or the sweating of the Collinite. So thanks for watching. Stay tuned for the next video on the trim. And as always, stay tuned for more crazy. What happens when the force pulls you back, your foot naturally comes off the gas. You have to keep your foot to the floor, foot to the floor.